What if I told you that one of the smallest countries in the world, just a dot on the map, was quietly buying tons of gold? Not oil, not land, not even the latest tech, but gold. Yes, the same shiny metal that ancient kings wore in crowns and pharaohs buried in pyramids. But here's the twist. Singapore is not just buying a little gold. It's turning into one of the fastest growing gold hubs in the world. Why? What's the secret? What do they see that the rest of us don't? Stay with me, because the story of why Singapore is buying gold is not just about finance. It's about power, survival, and the future of money. Chapter 1. The Eternal Power of Gold. Gold is not just a shiny metal, it's the ultimate survivor. Unlike paper money, which governments can print endlessly, gold is rare, lasting, and incorruptible. It doesn't rust like iron, it doesn't rot like food, and it doesn't vanish in a stock market crash. That's why, across every age of history, gold has held a special place above all other forms of wealth. When empires rose, they measured their power in gold. Ancient Egypt filled tombs with it. Rome paid its soldiers with it. Medieval kings hoarded it to fund wars. Even in modern times, central banks hold gold as the backbone of their financial systems. Through every age of uncertainty, wars, plagues, revolutions, gold remained the one thing people trusted. And now in the 21st century, the same story is repeating. Inflation is eating away at savings. Debt is rising in every major economy. Trade wars are reshaping the global order. And the US dollar, once the undisputed king of world finance, is showing cracks as countries seek alternatives. Whenever the world trembles, people instinctively run back to gold. Not just individuals buying coins and bars, but entire nations shifting their reserves. It's not about chasing profit, it's about survival. This is the eternal lesson of gold. Everything man-made can collapse, but gold endures. And that's why, in today's uncertain world, it is once again becoming the ultimate safe haven. Chapter 2. Why Singapore needs gold more than others. Singapore is one of the smallest countries in the world, barely bigger than New York City. It has no natural resources, no oil like Saudi Arabia, no farmland like the US, not even enough space to rely on itself for food. Its strength comes from people, strategy, and foresight. For decades, Singapore has been a global crossroads. Its ports are among the busiest in the world. Its banks attract money from every continent. Its airports link east to west. But here's the catch. All of this depends on stability. Trade thrives only when shipping lanes are open. Finance flows only when currencies are steady. What happens if war erupts in Asia? What if tensions close the Strait of Malacca, the lifeline of Singapore's shipping? What if the US dollar collapses under debt, or the Chinese yuan faces sanctions? For a small nation, those risks aren't abstract. They're existential. That's why Singapore treats foresight as survival. They can't control geography. They can't control superpower conflicts. But they can control one thing: how well prepared they are when storms hit. And that's where gold comes in. Gold doesn't depend on any government. It doesn't vanish if borders close. It cannot be frozen by sanctions. For Singapore, gold is not just wealth, it's independence. In a world where uncertainty is the only certainty, gold is Singapore's shield. Insurance against collapse, protection against chaos, a guarantee that, no matter what happens, the nation has something solid to stand on. Chapter 3. The Fall of the Dollar. For nearly 80 years, the US dollar has been the undisputed king of global finance. Oil is sold in dollars. International loans are issued in dollars. Even countries with their own currencies still keep US dollars as backup reserves. It has been the backbone of world trade since World War II, but today cracks are beginning to show. Rising US debt has forced Washington to print more dollars than ever before. And here's the problem. When you flood the world with money, its value weakens. Inflation eats away at savings. Trust in the dollar starts to fade. Meanwhile, rival powers are no longer willing to accept American dominance. China wants trade done in yuan. Russia is selling energy in rubles. Middle Eastern nations are exploring deals in their own currencies. Step by step, the world is moving away from the dollar. Singapore, always alert, sees what's happening. They know that if the dollar's grip weakens, entire economies tied to it could sink overnight. But gold is different. It doesn't answer to Washington, Beijing, or Brussels. It's universal. It's borderless. And it has outlived every empire that once thought its money would last forever. That's why Singapore is stacking gold like never before. Not as a gamble, but as insurance. If the dollar fades, and history suggests every currency eventually does, gold will remain. And Singapore is making sure it's ready for that day. Chapter 4: Becoming Asia's Gold Vault. Singapore is not only protecting itself with gold, it's positioning itself as the safest vault in Asia. Imagine you're a billionaire in China worried about political crackdowns, or an investor in India who doesn't fully trust local banks, or even a European company looking for stability outside the West. Where do you keep your gold? You need a place that is neutral, stable, corruption-free, and globally trusted. That's where Singapore comes in. Over the past decade, Singapore has quietly built state-of-the-art gold vaults, some hidden deep underground, guarded with military-level security. These facilities are designed not just for Singaporeans, but for the world's wealthy investors and corporations. And people are moving their gold there in record amounts. Even the biggest gold refineries and bullion traders are shifting operations into Singapore. Why? Because the country offers political stability, strict property rights, low taxes, and a reputation for safety that rivals Switzerland. In fact, some call Singapore the new Switzerland of the East. But here's the genius move. By becoming Asia's gold hub, Singapore earns global trust and influence without needing military might. They don't just buy gold, they attract the world's gold. It's no exaggeration to say Singapore is becoming the Fort Knox of Asia. A tiny nation turning its small size into a strategic advantage by guarding the world's most timeless treasure. Chapter 5: Preparing for Crisis. Singapore has a unique philosophy. Never assume the world will stay calm. Always prepare for the worst. This mindset is built into the country's DNA. During the Cold War, when superpowers threatened Asia, Singapore drilled its citizens, stocked fuel, and fortified defenses, even though it was just a tiny island. In the 1997 Asian financial crisis, while neighbors crumbled under collapsing currencies, Singapore had enough reserves to stabilize itself. And when COVID-19 struck, Singapore already had stockpiles of masks, food, and medical supplies, long before other nations even realized what was coming. So what's the nightmare scenario today? A global financial meltdown worse than 2008, a war in Asia that closes shipping lanes, or a collapse of the US dollar, the backbone of global trade. Any of these could wipe out a small, trade-dependent nation overnight. But Singapore refuses to wait for disaster. They prepare in advance. And gold is now their shield. Unlike paper money, it cannot be printed into worthlessness. Unlike foreign reserves, it cannot be frozen by sanctions. Unlike stocks, it doesn't vanish in a panic. For Singapore, gold is not about luxury, it's about survival in a chaotic world. A guarantee that no matter what crisis hits, financial, political, or military, the nation will always have something real to fall back on. This is Singapore's secret. While others gamble on hope, Singapore invests in certainty, and certainty shines in gold. Chapter 6: A Smart Play Against Inflation. There's another powerful reason Singapore is turning to gold: inflation. Every time a government prints more money, the value of that money weakens. You don't notice it in one day, but over years the effect is devastating. A dollar today buys less food, less fuel, less security than it did 10 or 20 years ago. For ordinary people, that means shrinking savings. For nations, it means wealth slipping through their fingers. Gold, on the other hand, tells a different story. Across history, it has kept its value, even as empires collapsed and currencies vanished. Let's put it in perspective. If you held $100 in cash since the 1970s, that money would barely buy a nice dinner today. But if you had $100 worth of gold from the same time, it would now be worth more than $2,000. That's not theory, it's history. Singapore knows this math better than anyone. They've seen countries lose fortunes because their money inflated into nothing. They've seen paper currencies turn worthless overnight during crises. That's why they refuse to rely too heavily on paper. By buying gold, Singapore shields itself from the invisible tax of inflation. Gold doesn't get weaker when politicians print more cash. It doesn't care about interest rates or central bank promises. It simply holds its ground. For Singapore, this isn't about chasing profit. It's about protecting stability. In a world where inflation eats away at wealth, gold is their anchor, their guarantee that value stays real. Chapter 7, Lessons from History. If there's one teacher that never lies, it's history. And history has shown us the same lesson again and again. Paper money comes and goes, but gold endures. Take Germany after World War I. The government printed so much money that it became worthless. People needed wheelbarrows of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. Children played with stacks of banknotes like they were toys. But gold, one gold coin could still feed a family. Or look at Argentina. In the 1990s and early 2000s, its economy collapsed. Banks froze accounts. The peso crumbled. Savings people had worked for their entire lives disappeared overnight. Yet those who held gold could still buy food, medicine, and even escape the chaos. And these stories are not unique. From the fall of Rome, to the Asian financial crisis, to Venezuela's recent collapse, history repeats the same truth. When currencies fail, gold remains the last line of defense. Singapore has studied these lessons closely. They know their survival depends on preparation, not luck. They refuse to gamble their nation's future on the hope that it won't happen here. Instead, they quietly build protection through gold. Because history whispers a warning. Empires fall, banks fail, governments break promises. But gold, it survives every time. And Singapore has no intention of being caught unprepared when history repeats itself again. Chapter 8. Sending a message to the world. Singapore's gold strategy is not only about survival, it's about sending a message. By stacking gold reserves, Singapore is quietly telling the world, we will not be controlled. They are signaling independence from the giants, America's dollar, China's yuan, and Europe's euro. For a country so small, this is a powerful statement. Gold gives Singapore leverage. When you hold gold, no one can freeze it like they can with bank accounts. No government can devalue it with a single decision. No superpower can threaten to cut you off. Gold belongs to whoever holds it, and Singapore is making sure they hold plenty. It's also about prestige. Just as military strength commands respect, so does financial strength. By becoming a gold hub, Singapore shows it's not just a trading post, it's a safe haven, a fortress of stability in a world full of chaos. For other nations, especially in Asia, this sends a clear signal. Singapore is not just surviving, it's leading. They are showing that even without natural resources, without a giant army, a small nation can still stand tall by being smart, disciplined, and prepared. Gold is not only wealth, it is independence. It is power without an army. And with every bar of gold they add to their reserves, Singapore is declaring to the world, we are small, but we stand on our own. Chapter 9. The New Gold Race. Here's the twist. Singapore isn't acting alone. Around the world, there's a quiet but powerful trend unfolding. A new gold race. China has been buying gold at record levels, moving hundreds of tons into its reserves. Why? Because it wants to reduce its dependence on the US dollar and prepare for any conflict that might lead to sanctions. Russia, cut off from Western banking systems after the Ukraine war, has also turned heavily to gold as a shield against financial isolation. And it doesn't stop there. Central banks in countries like Poland, Turkey, India, and even smaller economies are stacking gold. The World Gold Council reports that central banks have been buying more gold in the last few years than at any time in modern history. It's a clear signal. The world no longer fully trusts paper money. Why now? Because people sense change. Debt is ballooning, trade wars are intensifying, and confidence in traditional currencies is shrinking. Gold, which for decades was pushed aside by dollars and euros, is suddenly back in the spotlight. Singapore isn't just part of this movement. It's ahead of it. While other nations buy gold to react to crises, Singapore buys gold to prepare before the storm hits. That foresight gives it an edge. This is not just about wealth. It's about survival in the new financial order that's slowly emerging. And in this race, Singapore is sprinting ahead while others are only beginning to warm up. Chapter 10. What this means for you. At this point, you might be asking, all right, but what does all of this have to do with me? The answer is simple. The world is shifting. The money system that has shaped our lives for decades is starting to shake. Countries are preparing, quietly stacking gold while the rest of us are distracted by daily headlines. And when the smartest small nation on earth, Singapore, makes such a bold move, it's a signal worth noticing. Because history shows us one thing: governments and billionaires don't move without reason. When they buy gold, it's rarely about getting rich. It's about protection. It means they see risk on the horizon, risk most ordinary people won't see until it's too late. So what does it mean for you? It means paying attention. It means understanding that inflation, debt, and currency shifts aren't abstract. They affect the value of your savings, the cost of your food, and the security of your future. You don't need to be a billionaire or a government to learn from this lesson. The point isn't that everyone should hoard gold, but that everyone should think like Singapore. Prepare before the storm, not after. Because if history repeats itself, and it always does, the people who prepare early will survive the shocks, and those who don't will be left scrambling. Conclusion: the gold signal. So why is Singapore buying gold? Because they are small, but smart. Because they've studied history and refused to repeat its mistakes. Because they know the future is filled with uncertainty, and the only way to survive is to prepare before disaster strikes. Gold is not just metal, it is insurance against collapse. It is freedom from control. It is survival when everything else fails. Empires have crumbled, currencies have vanished, and markets have crashed. But gold, it has outlasted them all. And Singapore, with eyes fixed firmly on the horizon, is making sure it will never be caught unprepared. And maybe that's a warning for the rest of us. If the smartest small nation in the world is preparing for the storms ahead with gold, perhaps we should be asking ourselves, what do they see that we don't? If this story opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Hit the like button, share this video, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden forces shaping our world. And now let's hear from you. If you had the choice today, would you rather hold $10,000 in cash or $10,000 in gold? Drop your answer in the comments below. Your voice matters, and your perspective could spark the conversation we all need to have.